Welcome to Chain of Sounds. I'm Nisse Palm, and tonight I'm at the Nefertiti Club in Gothenburg, and I will have a chat with Jojje Wadenius from a bass perspective. So please follow me backstage.
Lägger jag mina caser här då någonstans tror jag.
Now we're backstage, or possibly in the green room of Nefertiti in Gothenburg, and it's such a great pleasure for me to say welcome to the Chain of Sounds channel and Georg Wadenius.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we thought about focusing on you as a bass player and the relation to bass players. And we did a little pre-talk, and you mentioned that it started pretty early in your home.
Well, it started with my mother being a really great piano player and playing both jazz and classical. And she, of course, had her heroes, which were Oscar Peterson, Dave Brubeck, Bill Evans. So there were a few of those vinyls back home, and what I listened to and what I kind of geared towards was Ray Brown, particularly, because he's just such a masterful bass player. So I was really checking out, and that's how I learned basically different types of progressions intuitively, not knowing what a 2/5 progression was, but I was maybe 10 years old, and I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I was listening to these things, and later on, of course, Miles came, and Bossa Nova came, and other things came, but I've always kind of built my musical, instinct on the chordal structure, and of course the bass is the most important part of it, Ray Brown was really what caught my ear,
Yeah, well, you couldn't have had a better role model, right?
No, not really, no.
So, are there any other bass players you remember from that time?
From that era, not really, even though I would listen to people like Scott LaFaro then, or whoever played with Bill Evans, I think it was Chuck Israels too, and but that was really the start of it, for me with the bass players. Then, of course, electric bass players came in, like, Paul McCartney, and that was really interesting to me, what he was doing. And I started playing the guitar when I was 13, so that was in '58. And then I developed, I was practicing and playing the guitar for many years, and then in towards the mid-'60s, or maybe 63, 64, situations arose that they needed a bass for something, and I would be able, since I had guitar technique, and I knew what the bass was supposed to be doing, and I played with a pick, though, on an electric bass. So I was able to fit into different situations and play, and then I also went to music school where we sang a lot. So I learned how to read bass clef because I was singing bass or tenor.
Is that where you have a hell of an ear? Is that where you built up your good ear?
No, I think my ear comes from just growing up with all those records and listening to my mother's playing.
Being open to listen.
Yeah, and also open to all kinds of music. Yeah. It was classical, it was jazz, not so much pop, but I mean Frank Sinatra's music, we listened to a lot of that stuff, and certain big bands, I remember, we're talking about 1960 or so, that's when I first heard Jim Hall, I think, and I was into West Montgomery, and of course I was into the Dave Brubeck had the saxophone player Paul Desmond, and Paul Desmond made his own, 3 solo records with Jim Hall on guitar, and Pete LaRocca or somebody on drums, and I don't remember who the bass player was, but it was I was just really into that. Art Farmer came here and played also with Jim Hall, and but the bass thing was Ray Brown is really the one that stands out.
Did you start hanging around the Golden Circle in Stockholm about that time?
Yeah, I did, and I went there and listened a lot. Oh yeah, that's right. I used to go and hear. I used to go and hear Cannibal Adderley play too at the concert hall.
With Sam Jones?
Sam Jones. Yeah, he was great.
Oh,
he was really.
He is a badass
funky bass player. You know, he was really good, and so yeah, that was also an influence. You know,
of course.
And you know, Ella came along and sang with Oscar Peterson every now and then.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah, unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time I was like maybe 17 years old. And but then I kind of didn't know whether I was going to be a bass player or if I was going to be a guitar player. And I studied medicine for 3 years before I kind of jokingly say that I did whatever I could for patients' safety, you know, and decided to become a musician, you know.
All right. And all of a sudden you found yourself in the Swedish studio scene.
Yeah.
In the 60s.
Because there weren't that many bass players or electric bass players. There were some bass players, but nobody really played the electric bass.
Was Stefan Brolin around at that time?
He was around about the same time, or maybe a year or two later, maybe, you know. But he played more in the rock, in the pop bands at the time, you know. Yeah. And I was more into the jazz thing.
And you did a series of, at least from the Swedish point of view, a bunch of classical albums.
Yeah,
I mean historic in terms of Swedish history.
Yeah, I started to work with his producer, Anders Burman. Yeah, Anders Burman. And he used me on basically everything that he was doing, or a lot of stuff anyway. So that was with the folk singer, or Cornelis Vreeswijk, with the jazz singer, some of it Monica Zetterlund, with the rock artist Pugh Rogefeldt. And
you did his three first albums?
Two first albums. Yeah. I played both bass and guitar on those albums, and I participated quite heavily in the arrangement of the music as well. And then it was Björn Jason Lind, played on his records. There was a Bernd Staff record. There was kind of like alternate rock type of records, a little jazzy, but you know, kind of indicative of the time, you know. Yeah. Then we had a band called Made in Sweden where I played guitar, and that was a guitar trio, and that later on turned into like a quartet with Carl Axel and Monica Dominic, and it was called Solar Plexus. And there I played bass sometimes, and then I played guitar sometimes.
You left for New York to start playing with Blood, Sweat and Tears, and how did that all come about?
Well, what happened was that I met this bluegrass player, Stefan Grossman, who lived in Italy at the time, and who toured Europe just himself and did solo concerts. And we had the same booking agent in Denmark who called me and said, "You should meet, you know, Stefan is great." So we met and we hit it off kind of when we jammed a little and played. And what I didn't know and what didn't come up at the time was that he was childhood friends with Steve Katz and Bobby Colomby and somebody else too, maybe.
Did you ever play with Steve Katz?
Yeah.
Yeah?
He was still in the band for a year.
Right, yeah.
And they were sitting, Stefan worked as an opening act for Blood, Sweat and Tears 3 months after we met. And they're sitting in a meeting afterwards and saying they need to find somebody who can play a little jazz, a little rock. And Steve wasn't really that type of player. He was more of a bluegrass player. Yeah. He played some electric, but that wasn't his. That wasn't really. He was more of a folk player, and And so Stefan recommended me, and they called me, and I went over and met the band and auditioned and got the gig. You know. Yeah,
Young,
it was pretty
young Swedish guy.
Well,
yeah.
I was 26 years old at the time, and at the time nobody else had ever had that kind of an opportunity from almost not from Europe, almost, you know.
Well, your impact on it's interesting. I think you changed the attitude of foreign musicians coming to New York.
Maybe I participated in it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the British bands obviously came
Because it's a close
but they
community.
they were not part of the. I mean, also it wasn't all that easy to get a working permit at the time. Blood, Sweat and Tears. Somehow, I don't know if they paid off the musicians union or what they did, but somehow they succeeded in getting me like a H1 special abilities visa, right? Basically saying that there was nobody in the United States that could do what I did, you know, which of course wasn't true, but
Well, you will never know.
But you know, people in immigration wouldn't know the difference, you know. So
And so I don't think everybody knows, not so many at all. You did actually play bass with Blossom Tears as well.
Well, it just so happened that Jim Fielder wasn't able to do some of the gigs that we were doing on one weekend, and I played bass then. You know, I knew everything that the bass was doing, because that's what listening to it at the time. Also,
your big ear,
my ears were really good, you know. So I kind of really knew, you know.
And you're also known to have like an elephant memory.
Well, I probably did, you know, but not anymore. It's been too much. Too much coming and going. I mean,
the hard disk full. You mean?
Yeah. It's a little fragmented, I think. You know. And I have. You know, from playing so many things, and also I think, you know, if you read a lot of music, which I never did at the time, I really wasn't not a good reader at all. I mean, I could read for the bass, you know, but when I listened, it was by ear, you know.
Yeah.
So when you start doing a lot of reading and everything, it's almost like you lose a little of the other side, you know. For me, anyway, you know.
Yeah. So you mean you want to play. You want to learn the tunes and then leave the charts? Yeah,
that's good if I can do that. Yeah. And I tried to do that. Like when I played with Steely Dan, for instance. I mean, that was not so easy because there was like 25 tunes maybe.
Yeah.
We rehearsed for 5 days, I think, 5 or 6 days. And then we went out and played. And everybody had music on stage except for Dennis Chambers, who doesn't read, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing because he's played with Mahavishnu, he's played with Brecker Brothers, played with Steely Dan, right? You know.
So he's
and the guy doesn't read, right?
A double elephant memory. Probably.
Yeah, at least, you know. So, but there I am, first gig in Florida, and you know, Donald is on the other side, Walter's in the middle. They all have music or lyrics or whatever they have in front of them. I have the music in front of me, and I'm like, nah. You know, it's like, this is not good. You know, you're playing in front of 15, 20,000 people, and you're standing there reading music. So the next 2 days, everybody else was enjoying Florida, and I was in my room studying the music and learning it by heart. And from then on, I was the only one, except for Dennis, who didn't have music on stage.
Did you memorize 25 tunes in less than a week?
Yeah, but we'd played it before.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we'd rehearsed it, you know, and then we played it live, you know, a couple of times. So.
All right, okay.
But, you know, when I did the memorization, it was just a couple of days, you know, but
Yeah. If we go back to Blood, Sweat and Tears, Jim Fielder left the band.
Right.
And in came Ron McClure.
Right, right.
Who was a doubler. He played upright and electric, right?
Yeah, but not with them. It was just electric with them.
Okay, yeah. But he's, I think you should listen to Ron McClure, guys. He's underrated, fantastic bass player, if you ask me, and Jojje.
Yeah. So, I saw Ron first when he played with Charles Lloyd's quartet. With Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette in Stockholm, and that was amazing. But we didn't meet then. I didn't meet him until he joined Blood, Sweat and Tears. But I really always enjoyed particularly his upright playing because he had such a unique way of communicating the chordal structure.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just. Yeah, I can't say it any other way. It was really unique. Yeah.
When we had a little pre-talk the other day, and when I listen to Ron McClure, I can have a slight comparison with Palle Danielsson, who also have a certain way of moving through the chords, and Steve Swallow. I think it's in kind of an chordal point style, but very control. It's a fantastic, and I really hope if you see this, Ron, I would like to have a chat with you. Then you returned to Sweden,
right?
And there was this band, De Gladas Kapell.
Yes.
With Stefan Nilsson, Costa Apetrea.
Yeah, and Peter Sundell.
Peter Sundell, yeah.
On drums, yeah.
Yeah.
That was crazy. That was a crazy band. I mean, I really recommend that people listen to that because it's.
I actually listened to it yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And your bass playing is up against the walls, crazy. It's fantastic.
Crazy. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And the compositions is like it's called. At that point, we were trying to name the style as jazz rock.
Right.
Today we could probably call it fusion.
Right.
But there is a lot of prog rock in it as well, I think.
Yeah. It's. I don't know. We just had fun, you know.
You can
and they were great tunes.
You can tell. Yeah, the composition, and they were all. Am I right? Stefan's compositions.
Yes, Stefan's compositions. Yeah.
And Costa Apetrea is like a fantastic guitarist. And while you were playing with Costa, you did your thing on electric bass.
Right.
And did he like challenge you positively? I mean.
I don't know. I just really enjoyed playing bass with it. You know, I think we all we just fell into this. I know Costa plays some bass too, but I don't think he's quite. I mean, I think he's a much stronger guitar player.
Yeah.
You know, and where I felt that my bass playing was maybe on the same level as my guitar playing. You know, at the time. You know. So
I second that.
Yeah. So it was it was a great time. Yeah. It was a great time.
And there was only one album, right?
Yeah.
So there was.
We only played 10-15 gigs.
Yeah, and then things happen. You don't really have to have a reason to disband.
I mean what happened was really that this happens in the summer of '78, and I had one daughter then. And we'd been living in Sweden with my American wife. She was miserable being in Sweden. Oh. I wasn't really that happy being in Sweden at the time. So we decided to move back to New York.
Yeah.
And that's why really, otherwise I'm sure we would have made more stuff with the Gladas Kapell. But I moved back to the States.
You have kept a continuous flow, creative. You're still writing, touring, traveling. You know, is that like the power of music itself that keeps you rolling? I mean, you write new songs all the time.
Well, it's not as frequent as it used to be.
No, okay.
But I do write some new stuff every now and then, absolutely. And I can see, you know, how it's been going creatively. I've been busier at certain times than others, you know, but it's there. I mean, you know, if I didn't have the music, it's an important part of my life. Definitely.
And you do actually play electric bass still?
Every now and then, yeah. I play with, every now and then with this really fantastic singer. Her name is Helene Sjöholm. She's probably one of Sweden's best singers, female singers, and
I don't disagree.
And we have she's her claim to fame was really when she got the lead part in one of Björn and Benny from ABBA, their musicals.
Yeah.
And then she got the lead part in the other musical they wrote as well.
Yeah.
So, and she was really like, it's like she became the one that everybody wanted to sound like, you know.
So, are you picky with your setup on electric, like strings and, you know?
Not particularly.
No.
I bought a Fender Jazz bass back in '67.
Yeah.
Still have it, and use that just on few occasions like that. You know.
So there are no like rumors of that Jojje didn't change strings since '67 or something.
I probably have changed them at some point, but it was a long time ago now. I don't play it that often.
Whatever they give you on stage, you just tune in and play. Yeah,
basically.
So is that like that with the guitar? You have your custom tele tonight?
I have that's a Pensasur guitar. It's built by John Sir. I have this little joke that I tell her about it because when I wanted a guitar like that, I wanted something with the tele body, but with like a Strat more set up, right, with pickups. And I was really enamored by Mark Knopfler's sound. You know, he had just done some records, and I love his guitar sound. And John had built the guitar that Mark was playing, right? So I went to John and I said, "Can you build me a guitar so that I can sound like Mark Knopfler?" You know, so he built me just the same type of guitar, right?
Yeah.
But he fooled me. It didn't sound like Mark Knopfler.
Well.
Nobody else playing his guitars would sound like him, you know.
Exactly. So and nobody sounds like Georg Wadenius.
Maybe not.
And you moved to Norway, where you still live, even if you travel a lot.
Yeah.
And in Norway, you have become good friend with Arild Andersen, who is a magnificent upright player.
A great player.
You've done a lot of stuff together. Is anything in the pie for the future?
Nothing planned right now, but we did a couple of Christmas albums, actually.
Fantastic.
With a piano player named Janne Lundgren.
Yes.
And I've done some duo concerts with Arild. And Arild made some really nice interpretations of Norwegian folk music.
Yes.
And with the singer named Kirsten Brottenberg.
Yeah.
And I toured with them for a couple of years back in 2005 or something like that.
So in those situations, you have the absolute freedom of playing whatever you like?
Yeah, basically. But you just want to do something that works with the music, you know.
Oh, great. The sun shines in. Excellent. Well, we were talking about Arild.
Yeah.
So...
No, it's Arild is like my wife. Arild and my wife Britt passed a couple of years ago now, but that they were partners when they were 13, 14 years old for 10 years.
Okay.
And then they split up, but they remained best of friends for the rest of their life, you know.
Yeah.
So I walked right into that, you know. It's like meeting her and then soon after meeting him.
The energy was already cooking, so...
Yeah, and I had already actually met Arild and Britt when they were in New York in the 70s too.
Okay.
But then they were together, you know, so that was, you know.
Yeah, so the and also when we I'll take us back to Stockholm, the Stockholm scene, where you probably played a lot with Palle Danielsson, who also left us just shortly.
Yeah. I played some with Palle. In the mid-60s, we did some gigs when we were really young. You know, I was maybe 20 and Palle was maybe 17 or something.
Okay.
And we played some jazz gigs with some other, you know, with artists. And yeah, so we did. But then we didn't really move in the same circles,
no, okay.
You know.
Well,
I was more in the rock circles and he was more in the jazz circles, you know. Even though I really loved what he did with Keith Jarrett and with other people.
Oh, yeah. But you played with Okai Temiz, right?
Yeah,
Oriental Wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the funny story. I played with Okai. I played guitar with him, and it was with Palle on bass, and then he couldn't do the gig one time, so I recommended our Finnish bass player from the Made in Sweden group. His name is Pekka Pohjola, and he's not with us anymore either. But Pekka came in, and then he was very unhappy being in Sweden, so he drank a little too much. So by the time we were going to do the gig, he's basically lying behind stage in a coma, you know, from drinking way too much. And, you know, I knew all the bass lines, you know. Okai's music was all this boom to dong 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 to dong 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 to dong dong dong, you know, odd time signatures and really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But it was much more important to have a bass with that music than to have a guitar solo here and there, you know. So and the melody was covered anyway, you know, by the saxophone player and piano player.
So you've been subbing for Jim Fielder and you've been subbing for Palle.
Yeah. So I'm playing this gig, right?
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the second set, Jaco Pastorius walks into the room. And I just briefly met Jaco when we were with Blood, Sweat and Tears in Florida, and Bobby Colombi met him. You know, Bobby produced his first album, the Jaco album. So Jaco is there and he checks it out and everything, and I'm playing well, you know, nothing wrong. After we played, Jaco comes up to me and he says, "George, stick to the guitar." So it's like,
well, you have to take that as a sign that you liked your guitar playing better.
He really liked
right?
my guitar playing,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
I thought I showed you something. I mentioned about Dan Stuffe, the solo bass player, the classical solo bass player who is living in Norway as well, and he plays a Gasparo da Salo built 1580.
Wow.
And we did an episode about that instrument and him.
Wow.
And we came to speak a little, and if you press the start button and please watch it.
Oh, okay.
That's when I first heard. I'm a bit of a fan of guitarist and jazz bass player called Jojje Wadenius.
Oh,
he lives in Oslo now.
Yeah.
And he plays on those two LPs with Cornelis Bellman.
He even plays electric bass on them.
Yeah. He does.
Yeah. So.
He played wonderful.
Yeah, it was a great player as well. He still is a great player.
He still is.
Ja, kul.
I think we will.
Trevligt.
Yeah.
Nice.
For this time, I hope. We were speaking about some of the albums that we mentioned before that you did, like in the early 70s.
Actually, probably
late
69.
60s.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I'm very, very happy to have had this talk with you. And
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for taking your time. And
Thank you.
I know that we will meet again pretty soon, but
Okay.
I certainly do
Okay.
appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you
Georg
so much.
Wadenius.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.